All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, talking up the Alabama Crimson Tide with the boys about 2 weeks into spring practice, taking a bit of time off for the Easter weekend and back at it on Tuesday. We talked to Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama and his show, The Way It Is, Fox 97.9. As Stephen M., happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you, Mark. It's been a minute, man. It's been a minute.
It's been a while. Yes, you're busy. I'm busy. But we will find some time and keep this going, keep this conversation, because the Alabama football talk, we need it here at Mark Rogers TV, and we need it from you. So we'll make sure that that happens. So with Alabama about a third of the way through spring practice, everybody gets those 15 sessions, and A-Day coming up on April 21st. This seems to be a storyline, Stephen, each and every year when it comes to Nick Saban, that he early in spring practice likes to play mad scientist a little bit, knows that he's got some personnel that he thinks, okay, wonder how this guy would respond at this position. Wonder how this corner would play at safety or vice versa, or this outside linebacker at safety or vice versa, a DN to outside linebacker, making those moves along the offensive line. Obviously, there's a number of pieces that you can switch around and see what the chemistry overall looks like. So what's the latest on that front concerning Nick Saban and the coaching staff?
Well, the experimenting right now going on, Mark, as you just noted there, on the offensive line, Alabama losing Bradley Bozeman to the National Football League, a 2-year starter at center. Right now, the Crimson Tide with Rosh Pierschbaker working that spot. Pierschbaker, who's played 42 career games at left guard. The last time he played at center was in high school. Pierschbaker coming out of Cedars Falls, Iowa, but does have some diversity, some versatility in his game, a very athletic guy. And Pierschbaker was actually experimented at center 2 years ago in 2016, though it did not fully pan out, excuse me, which is the reason why he was switched back to guard and Bradley Bozeman was moved up to center. But right now, on the offensive line, through 2 weeks of practice, Jonah Williams remains at left tackle. Jonah Williams remains at left tackle. Josh Casher moves over to left guard, and Casher, very interesting, he was the third-team starter at center a year ago. Casher, who came to Alabama, the University of Alabama from Mobile in 2014 as one of the nation's top center prospects. So Jonah Williams at left tackle, Josh Casher at left guard, Rosh Pierschbaker at center, Nestor Cotton still holding down at right guard. And at right tackle, we have the rising sophomore Jedrick Wills out of Lexington, Kentucky, who played quite a bit last year, was number 34 on the ESPN 300 recruiting network for the 2017 class. And the reason why Wills is getting some looks now, Matt Womack, the returning starter at right tackle, hurt his foot during the offseason training period. Alabama's 6 injuries in spring, and a good bit of those guys will not be able to participate in spring, but should be back by summer going into fall camp, according to Nick Saban. So offensively, some pieces being moved around. Where the defense is concerned, because of all the defensive backs not on campus yet, Josh Jobe, Jalen Armour Davis, and Patrick Surtain, those guys not arriving until summer, the Crimson Tide kind of thin at that defensive backfield. So Nick Saban using Devontae Smith, the wide receiver who caught the game-winning touchdown pass against Georgia in the national championship venue. Devonta Smith getting some work in at that cornerback position. Now, he will not be a corner. It's not in Alabama's interest to make him a corner. But because Devontae did play some defensive back in high school, Saban just trying to build some depth there until the guys that have been recruited to play corner arrive on campus in the summer going into fall camp. So some shifting along the offensive line. Devonta Smith getting some works in the corner. Just typical Nick Saban trying to see where his depth is in relation to spring ball.
We have Stephen M. Smith on the line from Touchdown Alabama. You can also join him on his show, The Way It Is, Fox 97.9, Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 Central Time, talking up the tide with Bama just about halfway through spring practice. Everybody gets those 15 sessions, and Alabama culminates their spring workouts on April 21st at the A-Day game. Stephen, quarterback battle in college, much different than the NFL. Typically, I'm going to say out of the 32 teams in the NFL, we know the starter going into the first week of practice, even for 27 or 28 of those teams. It's very rare based on contract status, based on seniority, and the best guy being just simply the best guy. But with the influx of people coming in and out of the program across the college ranks, you know what the deal is. We've got quarterback battles going on at Ohio State and Clemson and USC and Oklahoma and all over the place, a ton of other places, Miami included. And this is just the way it is in college football. So what happens is, whether it's in the spring or in August, if a guy has a bad day, if somebody sees that guy threw an interception on that particular day, or this guy had a really good session running the 2-minute drill, suddenly, boom, they spring to the top of the perception of who's leading the quarterback battle. But not necessarily is that the case. We've got, of course, Tua Tagovailoa and his accomplishments at the national championship game versus the more experienced Jalen Hurts. Have we heard anything about what's happened through the first couple of weeks, and if that gives us any kind of indication of what's going on?
Well, Nick Saban came out during the early part of March and talked with ESPN's Chris Lowe about wanting to play both quarterbacks, seeing how both guys bring a different dynamic to the team that the team respects. But, I mean, let's just be honest. Saban's going to play up the two quarterback talk until the first week of the season, when Alabama takes on Louisville and Orlando, and whoever really runs that team the way it's supposed to be ran, with success, with continuity, with flow within the offense, is going to ultimately win that job. I look back at the national championship game, and to see Tua Tagovailoa go in there cold, and yes, he got some playing experience throughout the 2017 season, played against Colorado State, played against Fresno State, played against Ole Miss, played against Tennessee, played against Vanderbilt. He got time on the field, but in a meaningful game where everything's on the line, it's either you win that championship or Georgia walks away with its first national title since 1980. And for Tagovailoa to come off that bench cold and give you 3 touchdown passes, including the game winner to Devontae Smith in overtime, it has to galvanize your team. It has to win that team over. The team feels a certain vibe towards Tua, but at the same time, you look at a guy like Jalen Hurts, who does not lose you a lot of ball games, 26-2, with him in there, does not turn the ball over a lot, very much so wants to protect that football, and that's something that Nick Saban idolizes, because he's all about the ball, protect the ball, know where that ball is at all times. So he's going to play up this 2 quarterback conversation, but by the first week of the season, we're going to all see who's really, really running that team. Right now, when Tua's out there, the receivers feel like, they can catch the football, they can pick up their numbers, they can pick up their stats, they're eating, they're doing what they have to do. When Jalen's out there, he possesses that cool, calm demeanor, and people flock to that. But at the end of the day, going through spring, going through summer workouts and fall camp, whomever wins this job between these two, Mark, is going to be well prepared, because they're both pushing each other to the brink. And there's also a third name in this quarterback conversation that not a lot of people talk about, and that third name is Mac Jones, the rising sophomore from Jacksonville, Florida. And this guy can sling the pigskin. Nobody talks about him, but he's got one of the prettier deep balls I have seen in a very long time. I've gotten a chance to talk to a couple of players, a couple of guys on the training staff, and when this guy is on, he is on. He can spin it. He's got a very quiet confidence about him, but just his arm mechanics reminds me a lot of A.J. McCarron during his time in Alabama. So Mac Jones, do not just cast this kid to the side. He can play. He can sling it. I like what he brings to the table, but just going back into the battle within the battle being Jalen and Tua, this will go more than likely into the first week of the season.
I was digging around for some Mac Jones highlights as you spoke there. 17th rated pro-style quarterback in his class, according to 247 Sports. And as you mentioned, out of Jacksonville, Florida. Very, very intriguing. All right, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, and also The Way It Is, Fox 97.9, joining us to talk up the Tide. We're about halfway through spring practice, and of course, the 8A game is April 21st. Got to subscribe to my YouTube channel for the very best in college football analysis from myself, but also from the best contributors around college football. So that's why we call ourselves, Stephen, the voice of college football. So I got a voice. We, of course, give a voice to the viewers, the fans, writing in their comments, their questions, their suggestions, their complaints, their discussions, their debates. And then, of course, we've got the voice of one Stephen M. Smith here and the best media contributors in the business. So this is the deal here, Stephen, as you well know.
And it's fun. It's fun to keep the conversation going. Listeners definitely supply the content that we have to talk about. I consider myself fortunate being a part of Mark Rogers TV, a very fortunate human being on this side of the camera here. But Alabama football, I've never seen this program this excited since 2009. And there's a lot of rejuvenated energy from fans to players to coaches to just people walking around about Tuscaloosa. I have not seen this much juice, this much passion since the 09 season, where you kind of felt something big was about to happen. And with this team and with the influx of new coaches, you can sense that something big is about to happen.
That's an interesting take, considering the winning has not stopped. Not a national championship every year, but national championship contention, and really not relinquishing status as the gold standard in college football since winning that first championship under Saban in 2009. I would think that either that vibe has never subsided, or maybe people have grown a little bit complacent, just thinking, okay, this is the way things are, and this is the way things always will be. But it's interesting that you're making a distinction about the 2018 vibe being a little bit different.
I think it is just due to, you got a lot of young coaches in here, Mark. You bring in Josh Gaddis from Penn State. He's 34 to work with receivers, also the co-offensive coordinator. You bring in Craig Kumagowski from the University of Miami. And, I mean, here's a guy that Canes defense the last 2 years, especially on the front line, 56.5 of the 81 sacks for Miami the last 2 years came from the defensive line. And then prior to that, what he did as a longtime assistant at Missouri, second to none, taking guys like Coney Ealy and Micah Sam and Harold Brantley, Shane Ray, Marcus Gold, and putting all of those guys in the National Football League. And Dan Enos, where the proof is in the pudding with him, took a lot of that average to below average talent at quarterback, whether it was at Central Michigan or at Arkansas, and turning those guys into being successful playmakers. So just surrounding Nick Saban with fresh, young ideas has really kind of helped the mindset for 2018. Because as good as Jeremy Pruitt was, as good as Brian Dable was, and those guys were good, as good as Lane Kiffin was, and he was good. When you get more young guys in there that can speak the language of a lot of these 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old guys, which a lot of their language is social media. That's their language. When you can get coaches to speak that language, but not just speak it, but also still produce the talent or tap inside the talent athletically that a lot of these guys have, you're killing two birds with one stone. And the one thing Nick Saban wants to do is be efficient killing those two birds with one stone.
We release top-notch college football content here at Mark Rogers TV each and every day. The voice of college football. The voice is from me, it's from you, and it's from the best media contributors in the business, including Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Please join him on his show, The Way It Is, Fox 97.9. So the last thing I'll hit you with, Stephen, is once the boys get back on the field on April the 3rd, that's Tuesday, It's just about 2.5 weeks until the 8A game. So once they hit the field for the big showdown that people look forward to, at least in the spring, your thoughts about any particular player or positional unit that you're interested to see? So for me, it's the wide receiver core. It seems to have question marks there, a lot to be replaced. So I'm just throwing out wide receivers. But where are your eyes most likely going to be focused?
My eyes will be more so on the secondary. Alabama losing 6 defensive backs to the National Football League. Minkah Fitzpatrick, Ronnie Harrison, Tony Brown, Hootie Jones, Levi Wallace, Anthony Everett. All of those guys gone. You return Deontay Thompson, who's an experienced player. You return Shaheem Carter. You return Trayvon Diggs and a couple of other guys. But a lot of young, fresh talent in that secondary to keep your eye on to see how quickly can they grow, how quickly can they adapt and adjust to the learning curve, and how quickly can they buy into what Nick Saban wants them to do, which is tackle at the point of attack, take the angle away, attack the football, be at the right spot at the right time, and to put it simple, just make plays. So happy about Deontay Thompson being back, Shaheem Carter being back, guys like Daniel Wright being back. But you look at Savion Smith, who's an early enrollee defensive back, and he's really been turning heads since coming on campus, the JUCO from Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. Now, he did spend time at LSU before taking the JUCO route, but Savion Smith playing well right now, especially when you bring in Josh Jobe and Jalen Armour-Davis and Patrick Surtain Jr. of a 3 freshmen in the summer, then that becomes really interesting to see how well can they adjust. But just speaking on spring right now, my eyes will be on that secondary with so many losses. How does Deontay Thompson, how does Trayvon Diggs, how does Shaheem Carter step into that leadership role, all 3 of those guys, and really take that defensive back group to the next level?
All right, there he is, Stephen M. Smith, Touchdown Alabama, and Fox 97.9 with his show The Way It Is, Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 Central Time. Stephen, we appreciate you stopping by, getting us set for the big spring game coming up in a few weeks. Not that we won't cross paths before that, but always enjoy the Alabama football talk, and we'll dive into the mailbag possibly next time.
Looking forward to that, man. But as always, enjoy that Easter, Mark. Enjoy that Easter.